Let's hit the high road. Let's hit the high road. It's the first touch, strong connection.
Hey, it's Nancy Yearout, and welcome to High Road to Humanity. And I have Stephanie James here, and welcome back to the High Road, Stephanie.
Thank you, Nancy. So good to be here with you.
It's good to have you back. She has a new book out, you guys. It's called Your Big Fat Juicy Life. And if you're watching me on my YouTube channel, I'm holding it up. She's got a really cool picture of herself on the cover. I really like this. And if you don't know so much about Stephanie, let me kind of give you a little background. She stands at the intersection of personal transformation and spiritual wisdom, weaving together her roles as a transformation coach, psychotherapist, and international speaker. She's a filmmaker and she's a pioneering podcast host. You guys, she has a podcast and it's called Igniting the Spark and with Stephanie James. And how long you been doing that now, Stephanie?
7 years, a little over seven
Oh,
years.
yeah. Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah,
Yeah, and so
yeah.
she has a really cool show. She actually just had me on there. So I don't know when it's going to air, but I hope you guys will watch it. She has a compelling documentary that she did when Sparks Ignite. You guys will have to check that out. It's featured on Humanity Streams. So if we want to watch that, we can just how do we find you? How do we see this?
Yeah, so the easiest, honestly, the easiest link for everyone is go to stephaniejames.world
Okay,
and all the links to books, to films. You can see a trailer of the film there.
cool.
And you can also join Humanity's team, which will give you access to not only my film, but I mean, a ton of conscious creators content, Greg Braden, Neil Donald Walsh, Suzanne
Oh,
Giesman,
all
you know,
right.
all
Awesome.
all all the folks. So
Okay,
good
great.
stuff.
Well, awesome. So I like this part. So I'm going to read this about her bio. She says, whether speaking from international stages, facilitating transformative workshops, working one-on-one with clients, or just dancing in the kitchen, Stephanie empowers others to discover their internal spark, the authentic core of who they are meant to become. You know, her message resonates across cultures and demographics, offering a universal invitation to step into a fuller, more empowered expression of self. So this is a really cool book. You guys need to check it out. But I have lots of questions for you today. And what I really want to know more than anything is tell us your story. You talk about the God spark, our light, which I believe this is, we do have the light. You say, I believe the spark is our essence. So tell us about this. Where did this come from? Why did you put this together?
The book itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the book comes out of a conversation with Neil Donald Walsh, who I was interviewing on my show. And when we popped on, I mean, much like you and I, Nancy, it's like we just had this cool connection, but
Right.
we didn't even get to the interview for like half an hour. We just kept talking and talking. And at one point, you just see it. He drops in like he's getting a download and he's like, Stephanie,
Yeah.
you're going to write your next book and you're going to start tomorrow morning. And this book is going to have a global impact, and I'm going to endorse this book.
Oh my gosh. Yes, I did read this in your book, by the way, because you talk
Okay.
about this. You do talk
Yeah.
about this in the
Yeah.
book. Yeah.
So it was like, and what was so incredible too, Nancy, is my first two books each took 9 months a piece to write. And it was like gestating a baby, like having a pregnancy.
Right, right. I
And
got you.
and then this one downloaded in under 6 weeks, a little under 6 weeks. And so it was just, I mean, I would just show up. Sometimes I'd get woken up in the morning, you know, 4:30 in the morning, and I just sit at the computer for 3 hours. I mean, I would just was in that flow.
Hmm.
And then I think the other beautiful thing was that the people that you read about in the book, whether it was Wayne Dyer's daughter Sage or his wife Marceline,
There's
or
stories. Yeah.
yeah, or Academy Award winner, Stephen Simon of the film What Dreams May Come. All these people just started showing up in my life. that wanted to be a part of the book.
Okay.
And so it's my life experience plus some of these incredible stories to help also, I guess, lend itself to even this being a more universal experience.
Okay. I'm going to rewind and tell the audience what we're really talking about. And we're talking about making peace with death, is what we're talking about in this book. I've not done a show, I'll be really honest with you, about death. I think people, I really feel this was needed. People don't want to talk about death. I'm just going to give my spiel here.
Yeah.
They act like it's not going to happen. They act like it happens to everybody else. And I think more today, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think today people are more like, okay, they're not here. They've already moved on to the next dimension. More people are hip to that fact. But we don't deal with death well as a society at all, do we?
Yeah. Our culture in particularly does not do well.
I
I think
know.
other cultures do so much better.
Yeah.
In Mexico with Dia de los Muertos and how they really celebrate the dead. They
The
feel
Day of
like
the
for those
Dead.
days, yeah. And
Yeah.
that the veil is very thin in those days, that their ancestors can come through and they prepare food for them and light
Oh,
candles and have parades. And so it's just like very celebrated.
I know.
But here, I mean, this book was important. And this book, to me, it's not just about death. It truly is about when we are able to befriend death and the concept of death and
Okay.
let go of the fear.
Right.
Then we are able to move into a more sacred life. And actually, this moment, living in the present moment becomes even more sacred because we can be present to it. Instead of having, fear of death is the number one fear in America. And to be able to let go of that and this
Mhm.
clinging and, oh my God, I got to get all this done and I've got all this pressure. It's like everybody's going to die. We're all going to die.
Yeah.
And that it's okay. None of us are exempt because one of the things that's okay is that death isn't the end, that
Right.
it's just the next chapter in our book of eternity. And once we can really wrap our hearts and minds around this, life becomes so much more easy and joyful. And that's why it's your big, fat, juicy life and everything after.
And everything after. Yeah, I didn't mention that. It's your big, yeah, and everything after, you guys. Well, let's rewind a little bit. Okay, so you do talk about tapping in, talking to God, connecting, all of that. And I really feel that, and I'm glad you talked about that because I think that's really the answer. I truly do. I talk about that in my book, A Guide to Angel Communication. I ask everybody to connect because once you connect, then you realize, oh, this isn't it. And I actually will tell you that there are times, and there's people in your book who said this that they look forward to going. And I have to tell you, I'm one of those people, not all the time, but there are times where I'm like, okay, I just want to go home.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Because it's uncomfortable to be here. It's hard to be here. It's difficult. I know we all chose to be here, but it's still difficult. And there are times where I just want to go home because this is so difficult and I don't want to deal with it. And I think a lot of people feel that way. But I want to go home because I love God. You know what I mean? That's why I want to go
Mm-hmm.
home too. It's
Mm-hmm.
so, I mean, and you did have people say that in the book, didn't you, when you were interviewing, or you talked about that a little bit?
Well, I had people that said that they weren't afraid of death.
Right.
They weren't afraid of it. And
Yeah.
I think maybe even Lisa Campion, not that she said that she looked forward to death, but she definitely wasn't afraid of that
Right.
experience. And I think, what you've hit upon is really the importance, and I speak about this in the book so much, of connecting with our inner GPS, which is that divine inside of us,
Right.
that the divine comes to us through us and as us.
Mhm.
And when we're in touch with that, we're in alignment, then
Mhm.
I think we can be right where we are. It's like we're being held perfectly, between heaven and earth. We're like right here in this beautiful moment. So we can be in touch with the divine in this moment. We can have a more magical sounds like, oh, it's froofy, but it does, life becomes so much more
More
vibrant. It
joyful. Well,
becomes, yeah, more
yeah.
joyful.
Yeah, yeah, when you connect, you're more joyful. Well, and then when you connect, you realize this isn't it, I guess, more than anything. I don't know. That's just how I feel about it. What has been your experience talking to people about death? Have you found that people, like in today's day and age, I guess, are a little bit more open or more receptive,
Yeah, what's interesting is when I was looking at research for the book,
right?
73% of people that were polled said that they've had some kind of experience with the afterlife, really of connection with people beyond the veil, but it's not talked about,
Right.
right? So that was one of the things that was important to me too, is like you had said, Nancy, just a little earlier, we don't talk about this stuff.
Mm-mm.
And so it's important that we start opening up these conversations. And I do talk about a friend of mine who told me, this has been a couple of years ago. He's like, people are going to these death dinners
What?
where, yes, yeah, where you'd get all dressed up, like really fancy, and go out for this gourmet meal. But the topic at dinner would be death. Because what it was trying to do is say, let's quit being afraid, or for me, it's like, let's stop pretending like, these people that are having these incredible experiences that
Right.
we know, that they're afraid to speak about it because they think they're going to be marginalized, or they think people are going to think they're crazy.
They're going to judge them. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So what if we start opening up these conversations so that we can just be in that place of like, oh my gosh, yeah, me too. I've had that experience too, and this is my version. And
Mm.
so pretty soon we've dampened this huge fear around death. And it's like, oh, we can celebrate that. Wow, I have had connection with
Mm.
loved ones who have passed.
Well,
Yes, I did have these incredible experiences when I was a child that informed me that death isn't the end of this journey.
isn't the end. Yeah, and I think if we could just change it up, like you talked about at the beginning, the Day of the Dead, they celebrate the dead. And we in Mexico, they do that. You'll see it in New Mexico where you are now. You'll see them burn Zozobra too. That'll be fun for you to go see. But anyway, I just want to say that it would be so cool if we could start to celebrate it. And what you're doing is celebrating someone's life. And I've seen this a lot on different movies and things, and I kind of like it because, it's better to celebrate and say, wow, look what they did. And gosh, they got out of here and, they made it. They've moved on to another dimension. You know what I mean? Because when you start to
Totally.
understand this, it's like it really is a celebration. And we look at it so backwards. We
Yeah.
do, Stephanie. It's
Yeah.
so weird.
Well, and that's honestly, Nancy, why I put the chapter in the book as well, which is growing beyond grief, or,
Mhm.
are growing with grief, I think. But
Yeah,
part of it was about the importance of feeling the grief. Yeah, we're going to grieve when we lose someone on this physical plane.
right.
Even if we have the complete heart and mind, intellectual understanding that, okay, that soul's going to move on,
Right.
it's okay to grieve. And that living a big, fat, juicy life isn't about, I'm always just going to be happy all the time.
Right.
Part of that juice is I'm going to embrace my entire experience of being fully human and fully alive. And so sometimes that's going to be grieving deeply. And, I just had an uncle that died a little over a month ago. He was
Yeah.
my favorite uncle.
God bless.
And
Sorry.
yeah, and it was absolutely unexpected. It
Okay.
was a thing where you get the call very early Sunday morning and you're going, oh, this can't be good.
Wow.
And it really was. I mean, he had gone in, he had fallen and broken his hip, riding his bicycle.
Okay.
And then here it was 2 weeks later, one night he just said, he called his daughter and said, I can't breathe. I feel like I can't breathe. And they took him to the hospital and he had a stroke and died that night.
And you just never know. Isn't that
Yeah.
crazy?
I mean, that was just it. And so
Wow.
did I cry? Was I sad? I mean, I was telling my
Devastated.
mom,
Yeah.
yeah, Monday I was just walking on these I live on 5 acres. So I'm walking these beautiful dirt roads. And I just had this sense of him drop in. And I just said, I was just talking to him. I'm like, I love you so much. And I'm going to miss you. I'm going to miss you because he's the one that always played the guitar ukulele during our Christmas, our
The
Christmas
family
Eve, and we'd all,
get-togethers.
yep, we'd have 22 of us in a room singing Christmas carols, and he always led them. And so,
Right.
so I guess I really want to make sure people get the message. This isn't about, oh, I'm not going to grieve. It's about, yes, we each have our own individual grief journeys, and that's okay to have those experiences. We
Mhm.
can also hold that. And part of what was so peaceful for me is when my uncle passed, within a few days, I really had this very deep knowingness. Like, he literally died within 3 days. A year before that, my aunt, his wife, had died.
Oh, wow.
And they were total, I mean, talk about two peas in a pod. I mean, they kayaked in Alaska, they rode their bikes through Europe. And I'm like,
Oh,
oh, I get it.
yeah.
Like, he was so devastated without her. And it was like almost like when he went to the hospital, it was his opportunity. Like, he was just like, I'm going to be with her. And I'm like, I would have this kind of funny vision of them, kayaking around on the clouds
Yeah, and
together.
hanging
And,
out.
but
That's awesome.
that it made sense to me. It made sense to me that, oh, he's totally free. He's totally happy, and they're
Fine and
together.
happy.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, that's it. You have to look at it that way because that's really how it is. Isn't that interesting? Yeah, I love it. I love it. You say we're never alone, and we're not. We always have our guides with us, and I like that you said that in the book. Can you share some of the interviews and conversations from maybe some of your podcasts over the last few years? I thought maybe I just ask you that. Is there anything you want to share from some of the shows that all the people you've interviewed and
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've interviewed so many people.
I
I,
mean,
I guess.
I know we're promoting your book, but you have a really cool podcast. So
Oh, thank you. Well,
yeah, so
no,
talk about
I
it.
feel, I could talk about some of my favorite. I've had so many favorite interviews, honestly.
Cool.
Like last year, I interviewed, excuse me, Lorna Byrne,
Yeah, I did too.
and yeah, I mean, and what a delight. I mean, I just,
That was
fell in
cool,
love
huh?
with her. Yeah, and Lynn McTaggart. And now I've had several conversations with Sage Dyer,
Cool.
Wayne Dyer's daughter. I just adore her. And same thing with Suzanne Giesman.
Yeah,
Um,
interviewing her too. Yeah.
yeah, I just hosted a live, I presented and hosted a live Sacred Awakenings event in Colorado.
You were telling,
And
yes, yes.
yeah, and Suzanne was there, Deborah Poneman. Um, we had live streaming Michael Beckwith and Neil Donald Walsh and Greg Braden.
Oh,
Um, Deborah Poneman was there. So many. I can't even think. Lisa Campion,
you learn
Simran.
you learn from all these people.
It's so incredible. And these people, what's so interesting is so many of these people I interviewed on the show, and
Right.
probably like you, Nancy, some of these people have become my dearest friends.
Yeah, yeah,
It's like we get to meet these,
yeah.
incredible lights. And I
True.
think oftentimes our lights recognize one another, and they
Hmm.
become like soul family. So that was such an incredible experience. And I love the podcast for that, for sure.
Right.
But I think, and it is one of the stories I share in the book, to go back to what's impacted me the most, though, more than any of these interviews I've had, which I've loved, and I love the people that I get to have on my show. But I have to go back to, my daughter, Acacia. And Acacia, now at 36, at 4 years old, literally was my teacher of immortality. And ironically, the name Acacia is Greek for immortality.
Tell the
It's,
story. So how is that?
yeah,
How is that? Tell
it's
the
it's
audience.
well, it's the tree of life in Africa. And so, yeah, so what happened with little Acacia when she was 4 years old, my Aunt Gwen was dying. She'd had breast cancer, but it had spread through her entire body.
Oh gosh.
And so at the time, I was a single mom, and I'm in the bathtub, and the phone rings, and Acacia brings in this, those days it was those huge portaphones we all had.
Oh yeah.
So I'm in the bathtub and my mom says, you know, they did the exploratory surgery on your Aunt Gwen this morning, and her whole body cavity was full of cancer.
Oh,
And
wow.
so they literally sewed her back up, and they said she probably has about 3 months to live.
Mhm.
And, you know, my aunt was 46. Um, and I get off the phone and I'm just crying in the tub, and little Acacia wanders in and
Mhm.
she says, Mama, why are you crying? And I said, Oh, honey. And, you know, she knew that Gwen had been real sick. And I said, Oh, Mama just doesn't want anyone to die. And she just sits down on the side of the tub and she looks at me and she says, But we never die, Mama.
Yeah.
And even though we didn't go to church, I thought, oh, she's thinking of heaven. I said, oh, honey, yeah, I know we go to heaven. And she just looks at me and shakes her little head. She's like, there is no heaven, Mama. She said, when I was in the sky, no, she said, when I was a light in the sky with God. And then she pauses and looks at me and says, do you remember your other mother, Dorothy? And I was like, oh my God, my other mother, Dorothy, was my grandmother who died when I was 13. And my grandfather had married the next year. So the only great grandmother that Acacia knew was Grandma Seal. You
So
know,
where
and
did
I
that come from? Out of the mouths of babes, they say, right?
that is just it, right? Isn't that great? And so she says to me, you know, your other mother, Dorothy, her light was in the sky with me and God. And then God put some of her light with my light, and I got to come down and be your daughter.
And you put some of this in the book, don't you?
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
because I think that's a really, I mean, I cannot tell you. Like I already knew, like I knew as a very young kid, I was already having experiences from very young of, you know, having spirits show up at my bedroom door night after night, you know, which Acacia experienced the same thing at my mom's house when she was 10 years old. You know,
Okay.
there were so many things that were validated. It wasn't just like, oh, this one experience. Like people that didn't even believe in spirits, like
Well,
my cousin's son, who was kind of this country kid who was just not with that at all.
right.
Like he saw the same little girl that my daughter and I saw, you know, in mom's
Wow.
basement. And
Okay.
so, you know, so these kind of things that were really validating those experiences and this knowingness that life continues, that yes,
Love
we
it.
change forms. But I feel like Acacia taught me so much.
Well, yeah. And did you ask her? I'm curious now because she was what, 6, you said? Or how old
She
was
was 4.
she? She was 4. Okay. So I'm sure you were shocked
Oh,
especially when she
yeah.
brought up, Grandma Dorothy. But is there anything else that you asked her, or did it just kind of go away and then you never talked about it again, or did she remember or anything? I'm curious.
Yeah, yeah. So, you know, we didn't really talk about it very much. I called my mother right away, and she
I
and I were like
bet.
sobbing
Oh my God.
because it was my mom's mom, you know.
Yeah, sure.
And then what's interesting is, you know, we didn't tell my grandfather because, you know, he is one of the people that would go like, "You guys are nuts,"
Skeptical, right?
you
Okay.
know. And
Okay.
so we didn't say anything. But what I talk about this in the book too. What I found fascinating, though, Nancy, was all these years later when Acacia was 12. And Acacia was very much a different personality. You know, she, as a little girl, was shy. She's introverted. She's an artist. She's brilliant, but very much an artist.
Yeah.
And that's not my grandmother. My grandmother was like me, you know, like where you don't know a stranger and you chat with everybody and you talk to the person in the grocery line. And, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
that was my grandma.
Yeah.
And so it was fascinating when Acacia was 12, we're all gathered up for this Thanksgiving dinner. And my grandpa had 26 grandkids, kids and, you know, grandkids and great grandkids at the time. And he says, you know, Acacia's the most, I mean, we didn't talk about my grandma either, because, you know, here he is married to Seal. And he
Oh, that's
says,
right.
you
Okay,
know,
remarried. Okay.
yeah. So he says, Acacia's the most like Dorothy of all my grandchildren. And we're just all like, whoa,
Whoa.
like that was the love of his life. And he could see
You could see her.
my grandma's light in Acacia.
Isn't that interesting? Did you
Yeah,
ever tell him? Did you ever tell him?
we
Did
didn't.
you
We
never told
didn't.
him? Okay.
No,
That's
no.
I love it. I love it. Well, I have to say, this is a fantastic book for anybody to read, especially if they're getting into spirituality and they have questions that they want to ask and that type of thing. Anything you want to share with us before we get out of here for today?
I think one of the things I talk about in the book that is one of those universal messages, my film has it. I feel like in so much of my work, it's about your period healing, period matters, period. Those are the three words on the poster to the film When Sparks Ignite. And it really is, as we heal these things within ourselves and we befriend death and we move from fear into love,
Right.
then we become conduits for more light and love and healing to come into the world. So each one of us are just these essential golden threads in the tapestry of humanity.
Yeah,
And
we
so it does matter, like each one
are.
of us, it truly, truly matters. And that this is really a time where I think, the universe or life is calling us to really have our light, our sparks ignited. The
Mm.
world's never needed us more. And
I think
so,
that, yeah, I
yeah.
think that too. I feel like I've been thrown out into the world because I can't hide behind a computer. I got to get out there. And I was doing that for a while. And as you're saying this, it's just, I think I mentioned it earlier. Sometimes you don't want to be out there because life is difficult, but our lights are needed out
Yeah.
there, and just so thank you. Thanks for writing this and thanks for coming on and sharing all of this information. I do agree with you wholeheartedly. We all need to work on ourselves. And as we all work on ourselves, we can bring up our vibration and our light gets brighter. And we just, yeah, that's how
Yeah.
I feel, huh?
Yes, yes. And I just want to say to you too, Nancy, thank you so much, for you being on my show. And
Oh,
it
you're
was
welcome.
such a joy having you there. And I can't wait to share your episode with everyone and
It
talk
was
more
fun.
about the angels. And oh, it's so good. So
Oh
thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. Well, yeah, I'm going to tell you, I don't know if I should bring this up, but we know I connected Stephanie with her angel on listen when you interviewed me, and a lot of people, I don't know if you've been talking to your angel, but it is life-changing, isn't it, when you connect with your angel?
Well, it's so interesting because I always believed I had a guardian angel. And I think so many people do, but they don't call it by a name. They don't whatever. And I told you when that name dropped in, you're like, so just close your eyes and see if a name comes. And before you'd even finish the sentence, it was like Micaiah. Well, then, Nancy, I couldn't remember that name, which is so interesting. I had a sense like, okay, I know that they're around, I feel it,
Oh wow.
but it was in the middle of the Sacred Awakenings event. Reverend Sue Fredericks gets up and she's inviting people to get in touch with their angels. Now, I remembered that the name began with an M. So as she's up there talking, I'm like, what is that name? What is that name? I'm like, M, M, M. I can only remember M. And then the moment she has everyone, she's like, so just close your eyes and notice your angel. And then it was like, boom,
It came in
Micaiah.
again.
Yeah. And the messages were so perfect and so yeah, I mean it
Clear.
was just clear.
Now I'm going to
Hmm.
tell you something. I'm going to share it with the audience. I wasn't going to, well, I don't know. I'm just going to go ahead and share it with the audience. So when I get ready for my show, I tell everybody my stuff. I always ask my angel if there's anything I need to know before I go on my show. And she says, she already spoke to your angel before we got on tonight. And I was like, what? And she goes, yeah, we already talked. I've never had my angel say that. I thought that was interesting. And you're going to have to ask. Because I was
Okay.
like, what? She's like, yeah, we've already chatted.
I don't know what you two
Okay.
are going to chat about, but we've already been chatting.
I
I
just threw
love
it out
it.
there. So I was like,
Love it.
oh, the other angels talk to each other. Okay, cool. All right, guys, if you haven't picked up my book yet, please do A Guide to Angel Communication and Spiritual Law. And definitely pick up Stephanie James' book, Your Big Fat Juicy Life. Here's what it looks like if you're watching me, you guys, on YouTube. It's and everything after. I want to get that part in. All right, Stephanie, it
Thank
was great to
you.
have you.
Thank you,
Everybody,
Nancy.
you're welcome. I hope everybody has a fabulous week and God bless.